Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you a Scrappy Tails Craft design team project. I'm excited to announce that I will be a guest designer over the next few months. I'm featuring the Tropical Bliss collection, which is the June release over at Scrappy Tails Craft. All of the products that I'm using will be linked in the description box below, but I highly recommend that you follow the link to her channel and also to her Instagram account so you can see all of the innovative products that she's created. All right, let's take a look at the products that I'm using on my card today. This is the Cockatoo, which is a beautiful layering die set. We also have the layered orchid. Now I'm going to be using the second layer, which is these orchids right here. There's also some detail pieces that I'll be adding, but I'm going to cut those apart and those will be tucked into my cluster today. And here we have the Chevron Stencil. We have the Tropical Birds stamp set. This comes with several birds and sentiments. And then this is called the Tropical Leaves Assortment. This is a large tropical leaf die set. I'm going to show you an A2 size card. Sabrina creates her products so that they can fit on 5x7 slimline as well as A2 size cards. And I just think that they are so beautiful. So I've already cut out all of my pieces that I'll be using today. We're going to start with our Cockatoo. As you can see, we have the base layer over to the right, but I'm going to start with the layering pieces. I wanted to go with a pink and gray cockatoo, so I'm starting with the feathers, and on the wings of that bird I've added a light coating of some gray. This is just some Stampin' Up! Ink. And then I have a smaller brush which allows me to get more of a concentrated ink on it, and I'm adding that to the bottom portion of the tail feathers and also to the feet. So no detail has been spared on this bird. It's lovely. I created a card with the flamingo die. I will link that at the end of this video. She also has a parrot, and there may be one more bird. I looked up cockatoos and there are several different varieties. This particular variety is a light pink and then it has a really bold pink on it. The feathers at the top of the head are typically yellow, but I wanted to keep that pink, white, and gray theme in this card. So I went ahead and was a little bit creative instead of following nature, and I added that spun sugar to the top. Where the eye is, that's that bottom piece that I'm working on. I started with the spun sugar at the top, and then I started adding my picked raspberries to the feathers that would be on the back of the head. I'm going to add that picked raspberry to the body of this bird, so you'll be able to have that vibrant color peeking out where the body is. And then I'm going to add a little bit of tea. I think maybe it's antique linen. I'm adding some antique linen to the branch. This whole thing is going to layer together beautifully. There is no detail that has been spared on this particular die. Sabrina has some very innovative products in her store. She is a creator of a pop-up dimensional cards. They are absolutely stunning. I have always admired her work. I'm going to link her Instagram account as well as her shop and her YouTube channel, and I would highly recommend, if you haven't followed her, that you do, because she just has some spectacular products in her store. In fact, some of them have actually been featured by Jennifer McGuire. Here I'm going to just start layering this up once I get this little soft color all over the face. So again, that's the brush that has that spun sugar, and you're going to see how easy this goes together. Sabrina's done all the work for you, so she has actually added, there's etching or embossing on that body of the bird, and it shows you where each of the pieces should go. all you need to do is make sure that you're layering your tail feathers. These are the 2 pointers I would give you, and that's layering your tail feathers before you add the branch or you add the feet. So you're going to start with your tail feathers right here. And once you get both of those feathers on, you're going to add your branch. And after you add your branch, you're going to go ahead and add the feet over the branch. So those are the only areas where it really matters, I think, which order you put things in. I'm going to add a little bit more of that gray around the bottom of the tail feather. I forgot to add that before I added my dies. Added the layering pieces, so I'm just going to use that small little brush. Those little brushes are actually for chalk. I think that I can't remember the name of the chalk that used to be really popular a couple years ago, but I found that unlike makeup brushes, these particular ones really hold the ink really well. And as you saw with the tail feather, and you see when I started to put the color on the feet, that I was really able to get a much more intense color. It picked up the ink out of the ink pad a lot more than the larger brushes that I used lightly on the wings. So I wanted to make the spun sugar just a little bit darker than the top of the face. There's eyes that you can add, so I'm going to add the largest white portion of it. And then once I add that eye, there's also a tiny little dot right there. You can see I'm going to use my, I think my jewel picker is what I ended up using. I added a little bit of that gray, as you saw, and I'm going to add that to the center of the eye. So again, it's all in the details, and I really appreciate when companies put a lot of thought. This die could have just been a single piece that you colored up, but by adding all of the pieces, the wings, the feet, the tail feathers, the eyes, it really helps bring a lot of these dies to life. And so this bird, I think, is just beautiful. I love cockatoos. I think that they're one of the most beautiful tropical birds that are out there, and this is one of the dies that I absolutely had to have. Now I'm going to add the wings. So we have the larger wing right here that's going to go down on the left side, and then there's a smaller little sliver right there on the right. You could add a little bit of foam tape behind this if you wanted to really get even more dimension, but look at that. Just like that, easy peasy. Now I have a dimensional bird with lots of layers, lots of details, and I think it's fabulous. I cut out these fronds right here. I thought that they fit. I'm making a slimline card that's going to be 8.5 by 3.5 inches, and I thought that these ones, they're a little bit smaller than the larger ones that I shared with you at the beginning when I was showing you the dies, and so they're going to tuck in nicely behind the bird. Again, I'm keeping this in the pink, gray, and white tones, so I've added some of that spun sugar, but I also left white space on those leaves. And then for the orchids, I've cut those apart. As I mentioned, I did die cut the layering piece, and then I cut them all apart. I'm adding that picked raspberry, again keeping with that pink, gray, and white theme. These are the centers of those flowers. Now I will tell you, I'm adding what gray I had on my brush, so I just wanted a really light coating of the gray. And then there's a third piece that's going to layer on top of that, and I'm going to ink that up with spun sugar. But what I did want to mention is that when I did cut these apart, it took me a few minutes to figure out how those little sprays that go in the center of those orchids, where they were placed. So I did take a little bit of time off camera. Maybe it would have been much easier for me to figure out had I not cut them apart first. I'm going to add that spun sugar all around the edges and keep the leaves basically white. And then I'm going to use the Chevron Stencil. Now, this is a slimline die that I had in my stash. Sabrina does carry some slimline dies in her store. I just don't happen to have them, so I used one from my stash. And I am going to do some stenciling over the top, starting with that gray, and then I'm going to add the picked raspberry, or no, the spun sugar, sorry. I'm going to add the spun sugar, and this is just going to help ground my composition. I did off camera go back in and add a little bit more of the pink at the very top. Right there you can see, just because the bird fits so nicely on this slim line that it was covering up more of that chevron than what I really wanted. I'm going to test out my stamp to see if it's straight. So I add a piece of acetate over the top, and it was straight. I'll ink it back up with that picked raspberry, and then I'm going to stamp the sentiment from the Tropical Birds stamp set that says, "You are my sunshine." I have a side folding slimline panel that I've cut, as I mentioned, to 8.5 by 3.5 inches. Now, there is a stitching on the white layer that we stenciled, and I want this pink to show through. So again, it's going to create that continuity on this card, and I'm going to add that wet glue all around and place this right over the top. So both of those were part of the slimline die that I had, so you were able to cut the layering piece without having to waste extra paper. Here's a look at my bird. I added foam tape to the back of it. As I mentioned, you certainly could add it to the wings. You could have added it to the top of the cockatoo's head. And then I'm going to start adding my fronds, 2 on the left side, 1 on the right side. So the left side's going to be a little bit heavier with the flowers and the fronds than the right side is going to be. I did want to mention that my memory card was full. I didn't realize it, so I did lose a little bit of footage from this. When that memory card stopped, I wasn't able to share with you that I did add some diamond stickles to the top of the feathers, and then I added it to the, I believe, the center of each of the flowers. So I did happen to finish that off camera, but once I get these pieces together, that's going to complete my card for today's. And I want to thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified whenever I do upload a video. I'm going to put this one leaf on, and then I left the other one off. Here's a final look at that card. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for joining me.